The moment I realized I was bleeding out on a concrete floor, I knew RORY STORM had ignored my plan again. The ceiling above me flickered like it couldn't decide whether to exist. Emergency lights pulsed red, then white, then red again, washing the abandoned office block in a rhythm that felt uncomfortably close to a heartbeat. Dust drifted down with every distant gunshot, fine and gray, settling on my eyelashes, my lips, the open wound in my side. Concrete was cold against my cheek. Not metaphorically cold, actually brutally cold. I exhaled through clenched teeth and told myself not to move. Moving was how you turned annoying injury into tragic cautionary tale. The warmth spreading under my ribs was concerning. Blood had a way of feeling almost polite at first. Warm, gentle. Like it wasn't actively trying to end you. I hated that about it. Eli. Rory's voice snapped through the comm in my ear. Clear. Sharp. Infuriatingly alive. Status. I laughed. It came out as a thin, ugly sound, more breath than humor. Oh, you know, I muttered. Living the dream. Horizontal. Leaking. There was a pause. Half a second, maybe less. RORY STORM didn't pause unless something had gone very wrong. Or unless he was choosing violence. Stay with me, he said. Command, not concern. Where are you? 3rd floor. West corridor. By the offices that still think beige is a personality. Another flicker of light. Broken glass crunched somewhere to my left as a shadow moved past a doorway. Not friendly. I kept my eyes half-lidded, breathing shallow, counting the seconds between distant shots. The operation was over. Not officially, no one had called retreat, but I knew the signs. Too much noise. Too many variables. The kind of beautiful layered plan I'd built had collapsed into chaos. Formally, we had failed.
If this story caught you, subscribe. More are waiting.
Personally, I was annoyed. I pressed my palm against my side. My hand came away slick, fingers trembling despite my best efforts. Adrenaline was fading. Shock was circling, patient as a vulture. This is what happens, I said into the comm. Because apparently I was committed to being insufferable. Even while bleeding, when someone mistakes momentum for strategy. Eli, Rory growled, closer now. I could hear it. Not just through the comm, but through the building itself. Boots on concrete. Orders barked low and fast to someone else on his team. You're going to save the lecture. Oh, I'm saving it, I said. PowerPoint and everything. Very colorful. Lots of arrows. You love arrows. Another distant explosion rattled the walls. Dust rained down again. I squeezed my eyes shut and focused on breathing. In, out, slow, controlled. Control mattered. Control was the difference between survival and... The memory hit me without warning. Rory standing over the tactical table earlier that night. Arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes skimming my projections like they were optional reading. Too clean, he'd said. Real fights don't follow straight lines. They do if you make the right ones, I'd replied, smiling like I wasn't. Already imagining several ways to strangle him with a laser pointer. He hadn't followed the lines. Of course he hadn't. RORY STORM didn't do lines. He did storms. Fast, brutal, instinct-driven charges that worked just often enough to be dangerous. And yet, another shudder ran through me, this one deeper, colder. My teeth chattered. I pressed my forehead to the floor, and breathed in dust, and old carpet glue and rust. The worst part wasn't the pain, or the blood, or the fact that my plan, my perfect, elegant plan, had unraveled. The worst part was the certainty. Rory was coming. He always did. Even when he ruined everything, even when he ignored me, even when his instincts bulldozed straight through my careful contingencies, he showed up. Fast, relentless, like gravity. I hated that I counted on it. Footsteps thundered closer. A body dropped somewhere nearby. A sharp command, then silence. The air shifted, charged with that particular tension that meant an alpha was clearing space. Eli, Rory said again. No comm this time. Real. Close. I opened my eyes just as his shadow fell over me, blocking the flickering light. He looked exactly like he always did in the field, focused, fierce, completely convinced the world would bend if he hit it hard enough. About time, I whispered, managing a crooked smile. You're late. His gaze flicked to my side, then back to my face. Something unreadable crossed his expression, gone in an instant. Yeah, he said, already moving, already lifting me like I weighed nothing at all. You can yell at me about it later. As he hauled me toward the stairs, gunfire echoing behind us, I let my head fall back against his shoulder and closed my eyes. This operation was a failure, but I was alive. And somehow, infuriatingly, that was because of him. The tactical center smelled like recycled air and bad decisions. Cold white light poured down from the ceiling, flattening everything beneath it: faces, metal tables, the faint hum of machinery that never really slept. Holographic projections hovered over the central table, layers of translucent blue and red lines intersecting in precise, elegant patterns. My patterns. I stood at the head of the table, hands clasped behind my back, spine straight. Calm was a posture as much as it was a mindset, and I wore it well. 3 entry points, I said, rotating the hologram with a flick of my fingers. Primary access through the west stairwell. Secondary through the maintenance shafts. The third team remains mobile, cutting off retreat routes. Around the table, heads nodded. Screens adjusted. Someone murmured approval. RORY STORM leaned against a pillar at the far end of the room, arms crossed, one boot propped casually against the wall. He looked like he'd wandered into the wrong meeting, and decided to stay out of curiosity. Relaxed. Loose. Dangerous in the way a drawn blade is dangerous even when it's still. I ignored him. Or rather, I pretended to. The timing is critical, I continued. If we hit all 3 points within a 90-second window, we control the flow. No crossfire. Minimal resistance. I paused, letting the silence do its work. Silence was an underrated tool. It made people lean in. That assumes, Rory said, finally pushing off the wall, that everyone does exactly what the little lines tell them to. A few heads turned. The room shifted, subtle but unmistakable. I smiled. Polite. Thin. The little lines, I said, are projections based on enemy movement, patterns, structural weaknesses, and our own team's capabilities. If followed, they reduce casualties by 40%. Rory walked closer, circling the table like a predator inspecting a trap. His eyes skimmed the hologram, dismissive. Looks pretty, he said. Real fights aren't. There it was. Mara Klein, standing slightly apart from the rest of us, didn't react. She never did, not visibly. Beta, coordinator, the closest thing this place had to a neutral force. Her gaze flicked between us, sharp and calculating. Care to elaborate? I asked, tilting my head. Or is this where we substitute insight with vague skepticism? A few suppressed smiles. Rory's lips twitched. I'm saying, he replied evenly, that the field doesn't care about your projections. People panic. Shots go wide. Someone misses a door. Someone else charges when they shouldn't. And that's why, I shot back, we plan for contingencies instead of glorifying chaos. Rory stopped directly across from me now. Up close, he was all coiled energy and quiet confidence. Like he already knew how this would end. Paper geniuses don't survive the field, he said, not loudly. Not angrily. Just. Certainly. The room went still. For half a second, the words landed exactly where he meant them to. Right in my chest. A familiar unwelcome heat flared there. Old. Sharp. I felt it. I let it burn. Then I smiled again. Good thing, I said, meeting his gaze without flinching. I'm not made of paper. Mara cleared her throat. A subtle but effective interruption. Enough, she said. We run Eli's plan. Adjustments can be made on site if necessary. Rory's eyes stayed on mine for a moment longer. Measuring. Assessing. Fine, he said at last. Your plan? He turned away, already done with the conversation. As the meeting broke and the holograms faded, I stood there, hands still clasped behind my back, jaw tight. The humiliation lingered only briefly. What replaced it was colder. Sharper. He thought intelligence was weakness. I would make him learn the difference. The city at night was a living thing. It breathed through narrow alleys and exhaled neon light onto wet asphalt. Rain had fallen earlier, leaving the streets slick and reflective, every surface a mirror waiting to betray you. From the rooftop where I crouched, the grid of buildings below looked almost orderly. Almost. Positions confirmed, Mara's voice murmured through the comms. Calm. Centered. All teams ready. I scanned the streets, eyes flicking between reality and the translucent overlays projected onto my visor. Blue lines traced our planned routes. Red marked potential enemy movement. Everything was exactly where it was supposed to be. Alpha team, hold, I said. Wait for my signal. Silence answered. A good sign. Then RORY STORM moved. Alpha team, go, he said into the open channel, his voice cutting through mine like it hadn't existed. What are you doing? I snapped, fingers flying over my controls. My heart rate spiked, hot and immediate. You're 30 seconds early. Opportunity window, Rory replied, already in motion. Taking it. On my display, his icon surged forward, the rest of his team following without hesitation. No staggered approach. No controlled pacing. A straight, aggressive push straight through my carefully mapped perimeter. I swore under my breath. This is exactly what I warned you about, I muttered. Rerouting projections. Trying to salvage structure from instinct-driven chaos. You're triggering their eastern lookout. Gunfire erupted below. Muffled pops, then sharper cracks as weapons answered back. Shapes scattered. Icons flared red. I tracked everything at once. Mind racing. Recalculating on the fly. Every violation of the plan felt personal. A deliberate insult etched into moving data points. Rory vaulted a barrier, disappearing briefly from my display before reappearing deeper inside the zone. Too deep. Too fast. Pull back, I ordered. You're overextending. Negative, he said. They're shifting north. I'm cutting them off. I clenched my jaw so hard it ached. He was wrong. He had to be. Except, my sensors flickered. Enemy signatures spiked. Then vanished. Routes I'd flagged as low risk suddenly lit up. Blind spots. Gaps in my own projections I hadn't noticed until they were exposed by motion. Rory wasn't charging blindly. He was herding them. Secondary team, I said sharply, adjusting my tone. Redirect. Now. Close the east corridor. Mara didn't question it. She never did. Orders rippled through the network, seamless and fast. The fight was over in under 4 minutes. When the last hostile icon blinked out, the city exhaled again. Rain began to fall, soft and steady, washing blood and gunpowder into the gutters. I stayed where I was, staring at the data long after it stabilized. The operation was a success. Clean, efficient, minimal casualties. My plan lay in pieces beneath it, broken, bent, and inexplicably improved. Rory's deviations had sealed routes I hadn't accounted for. Closed angles I'd misjudged. He'd moved not where the plan told him to, but where the city itself seemed to push him. I hated that. I hated the way my chest tightened with something dangerously close to awe. Hated the sharp twist of cognitive dissonance that followed. There was a rational explanation. There had to be. Pattern recognition. Luck. Statistical outlier. Anything but instinct. Nice recovery, Rory said over the comm, casual as ever. Told you straight lines get you killed? I didn't respond. I pulled the visor from my face and let the rain hit my skin, cold and grounding. Anger simmered beneath it. Familiar and comforting. He hadn't outplayed me. He'd just gotten lucky. I told myself that over and over again, even as the evidence glowed silently in my mind. Storms didn't follow lines. And that apparently was a problem. The safe house was barely big enough to qualify as a room. One light hung from the ceiling, exposed and unforgiving, casting a tight circle of white over concrete walls and a single metal table. The rest of the space dissolved into shadow. No windows. No distractions. Just us, and the low hum of outdated ventilation struggling to keep up. I hated it immediately. Temporary stop, Mara had said. Weather's bad, patrols are thick. We move at dawn. So, here we were. I sat on one side of the table, back straight, cleaning rain and grit from my gear with methodical precision. Control returned in small, familiar motions. Across from me, Rory leaned against the wall, arms crossed, helmet resting at his feet like an afterthought. Too close. The room made proximity unavoidable. The air still smelled faintly of rain and ozone, but beneath it was something else, metal, heat, the sharp edge of adrenaline that hadn't quite faded. His presence pressed in on all sides, impossible to ignore. You've been quiet, Rory said at last. I'm conserving energy, I replied without looking up. Try it sometime. A corner of his mouth twitched. You're angry. I paused, then set the cloth down carefully. Observant. You didn't thank me, he added. I looked up then, meeting his gaze. For what? Ignoring my plan? For making sure you didn't have to rewrite it from a hospital bed. There it was. The line between irritation and something else, thinner than I liked. You don't get credit for fixing problems you create, I shot back. Rory pushed off the wall and took a step closer. The space shrank instantly. I could feel the warmth of him now, radiating through the thin barrier of air between us. You build plans like you're afraid of people, he said. The words hit harder than any insult he'd thrown before. I laughed, sharp and brittle. That's a reach. No, he said calmly. It's not. Silence stretched. The light hummed overhead. Somewhere in the building. Pipes clicked as they cooled. You don't plan for chaos because you hate it, Rory continued. You plan for it because you don't trust it to choose you. My fingers curled against the edge of the table before I could stop them. You think you know me? I asked. I think, he said, voice lower now, that you've spent your whole life proving you're more than what people expect. So you make yourself indispensable, untouchable. I swallowed. The room felt warmer, smaller. That's ridiculous, I said, though the words lacked conviction. Is it? He tilted his head, studying me with unsettling focus. You don't need control because you're weak. You need it because it's how you stay free. Dangerous. That was the word for this conversation, not because of proximity or biology or any of the things people like to simplify. Dangerous because he was right. I pushed back from the table and stood, needing space that didn't exist. Don't psychoanalyze me, I snapped. Stick to what you're good at. Rory's gaze softened, just slightly. You don't give yourself enough credit. That's not your concern. No, he agreed. But it's your blind spot. We stood there, a breath apart, the tension between us thick and strangely quiet. I could smell the rain on him now, clean and sharp, and something deeper beneath it, heat, familiarity, safety. It unsettled me more than any touch could have. I turned away first. Intellectual closeness, I realized, was far more dangerous than physical. And RORY STORM was standing far too close to my mind. The industrial district looked dead from a distance. Up close, it was just waiting. Skeletons of factories loomed against the night sky, rusted beams clawing upward like broken ribs. Conveyor belts sagged under their own weight. Windows stared back at us, black and empty. The air smelled of oil, old rain, and something sharp that prickled at the back of my throat. This is wrong, I said quietly into the calm. My overlays jittered. Data lagged for half a second, long enough to make my skin crawl. Signals bounced where they shouldn't. Silence pooled where movement should have been. Define wrong, Rory replied. He sounded relaxed, which made it worse. Too quiet, I said. No scouts, no reactive shifts. They're letting us walk in. We advanced anyway. Because sometimes knowing something is wrong doesn't give you the luxury of stopping. The first shot came from above. Glass exploded somewhere to our right. A body went down. My display flared red. Too many reds all at once. The world snapped into noise and motion. Contact, multiple angles. Someone shouted. My plan disintegrated in real time. Route side marked as secure lit up with hostiles. Secondary exits collapsed under suppressive fire. The elegant layers I'd built peeled away, leaving nothing but raw chaos beneath. I tried to adapt. Issued reroutes. Split teams. Pulled people back from kill zones that hadn't existed 5 seconds earlier. Nothing stuck. They're funneling us, Mara said, her voice tight but controlled. Eli. I see it, I snapped, fingers flying. I didn't see enough. I couldn't see enough. Every adjustment opened another hole. Control slipped through my grasp like water. A sharp crack split the air. Pain bloomed white-hot along my side, stealing my breath and my balance in one brutal motion. I hit the ground hard. For a heartbeat, all I could hear was my own pulse, loud and disorienting. The world tilted. My visor flickered, then went dark. I'm down, I said, forcing the words past clenched teeth. West platform. There was no time to analyze the mistake. No time to fix it. Rory was already moving. I heard him before I saw him. Boots pounding metal, gunfire cutting clean, decisive lines through the chaos. Orders barked with absolute certainty, each one landing exactly where it needed to. Cover left, push through, don't stop. Someone grabbed my collar, dragging me back as rounds sparked against steel inches from my head. Rory dropped into a crouch over me, his body a solid barrier between me and the storm of bullets. You with me? He demanded. I nodded, though the motion sent a wave of nausea rolling through me. Good, he said. No hesitation. No questions. Then, listen. He moved us in bursts. Short, aggressive pushes that broke their rhythm. He didn't wait for confirmation. Didn't ask for data I couldn't give him. He trusted that I'd keep up if I could, and if I couldn't, he'd carry the weight himself. I watched it happen through a haze of pain and disbelief. He closed gaps I hadn't seen. Anticipated flanks before they formed. Where my plan had failed, his instincts carved a path out of the trap. Now, he said, hauling me upright as the rest of the team broke through the perimeter. Go. We ran. The world narrowed to breath and impact in the steady pressure of his hand at my back, guiding me forward until the noise faded and the night opened up again. When it was over, we regrouped beneath a broken overpass. Rain started up, light and cold. We'd lost people. Not many, but enough. I sat on the ground, back against damp concrete, staring at the red markers on my display that would never turn blue again. My confidence, so carefully constructed, fractured under the weight of it. Rory crouched nearby, silent now. Watching, not judging. I didn't look at him. I couldn't. Thank you, I thought, the word heavy and unfamiliar. I didn't say it. But for the first time since I'd met him, I let the silence speak instead. The analytical center was quieter than the tactical floor. No urgency here. No raised voices. Just the soft hum of servers and the faint glow of screens stacked with years of archived data. Old operations. Failed plans. Forgotten victories. The ghosts of decisions that had once mattered. I liked this place. Usually. I pulled up the ambush footage again, slowing it frame by frame. Patterns emerged the way they always did. Subtle, deliberate, cruel in their precision. Whoever had set the trap knew how we thought. Not just how we moved, but how we planned. My fingers froze mid-gesture. No, I murmured. Mara stood a few steps behind me, arms folded. You see something? I see handwriting, I said. And I don't like it. I overlaid older datasets, some of them years old. Deprecated strategies. Retired contingencies. Moves that hadn't been used since before I'd joined the program. The match rate climbed. 80%. 90%. I exhaled slowly, my pulse ticking up in a way that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with recognition. Silas Reed, I said. The name tasted wrong. Mara's expression tightened. He's gone. So was this approach, I replied. Until now. Silas had been a strategist once. Brilliant. Precise. The kind of mind that could dismantle an operation without ever stepping into the field. He'd taught me indirectly, through notes, through models, through the quiet arrogance of someone who believed intellect was the only thing that mattered. He'd also lacked something fundamental. Empathy. Explain, Mara said. He doesn't design plans, I said, eyes locked on the screen. He designs pressure, forces people into predictable reactions. He doesn't care who gets hurt as long as the system breaks. A pause. Like the ambush. Exactly. I didn't say the rest. That Silas had always believed morality was inefficiency. That he'd once dismissed the concept of a team as sentimental architecture. That I'd almost agreed with him. Footsteps echoed behind us. I didn't need to turn to know it was Rory. You've been staring at that screen for 10 minutes, he said. That's new. I straightened, forcing my shoulders back. We have a problem. He stepped closer, gaze flicking over the data. We already had one. This one thinks like me, I said. Then, more quietly. Or like I used to. Rory studied my face instead of the screen. His brow furrowed, just slightly. You okay? The question caught me off guard. I'm fine, I said automatically. Eli. He said, low and steady. You're not. I looked away. Silas Reed was proof of what happened when intellect detached itself from consequence. When strategy became an end in itself, stripped of loyalty, stripped of care. A mirror I hadn't known I was afraid of. He's dangerous, I said at last. Not because he's smart. Because he doesn't hesitate. Rory nodded once. Then we don't let him set the tempo. I glanced at him, something tightening in my chest. He wasn't challenging me. He wasn't dismissing the threat. He was adapting. Intelligence without morality was a weapon. And somewhere out there Silas Reed was aiming it at us. The training hall was empty. That alone made it unsettling. No voices. No movement. Just the wide stretch of reinforced flooring, scarred from years of impacts. And rows of inactive equipment lining the walls like silent witnesses. Overhead lights burned too bright, too honest. There was nowhere to hide here. Not behind data, not behind orders. I liked training halls when they were loud. Rory stood in the center of the room, jacket tossed aside, sleeves rolled up. He looked like he belonged there in a way I never did. Grounded, physical, real. Like the space itself recognized him. I stayed near the edge. "You're avoiding me," he said. "I'm busy," I replied. "Unlike some people, I prepare." "For what?" He turned to face me fully. "Another ambush?" The words landed hard. I felt heat surge up my spine. "Careful." "No," Rory said. "You be careful. You've been pulling everything tighter since Reed showed up. Overcorrecting. You're not thinking, you're bracing." "That's rich," I snapped, stepping forward despite myself. Coming from someone whose entire strategy revolves around hitting things until they stop moving. His jaw tightened. "I hit what needs to be hit. And I prevent us from needing to bleed in the first place. Tell that to the people we lost." Silence slammed down between us. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. My hands curled into fists at my sides, nails biting into my palms. "You think I don't know that?" I said quietly. "You think I don't replay every decision? Then why are you treating instinct like the enemy?" Rory shot back. "Why do you flinch every time something doesn't fit your model?" "Because models are predictable," I said sharply. "People aren't. That's the point." He took a step closer. Then another. The distance between us shrank until I could feel the heat of him again. Solid and infuriating. "You don't hate instinct," Rory said. "You're afraid of it." I scoffed. "You're afraid it'll choose wrong," he continued, cutting me off. "That if you stop controlling every variable, you won't be chosen at all." The room tilted. My breath caught, sharp and involuntary. I stared at him, anger flaring so fast it almost hid the truth beneath it. You don't trust instinct because it doesn't justify itself," he said. "It doesn't explain, it doesn't ask permission. And you've spent your whole life proving you deserve your place." The words struck with brutal accuracy. I laughed, the sound brittle. "You're projecting." "No," he said. Softer now. "I'm seeing you." Something cracked. I turned away, pacing toward the wall, fingers dragging through my hair. The lights felt too bright. My skin buzzed, nerves lit up like exposed wire. Instinct terrified me because it didn't care how smart I was. Because it didn't guarantee fairness. Because somewhere deep down, I was still afraid that when everything stripped away, status, plans, proof, I'd be the wrong choice. I stopped. Swallowed. "You think you're just a weapon," I said, my voice lower than I intended. "But you're not, you adapt. You read things I can't." Rory didn't respond right away. When he did, his voice was steady. "And you think you're only valuable if you're indispensable." I closed my eyes. The anger drained out of me, leaving something raw and unsteady in its place. Vulnerability, the kind I avoided at all costs. I turned back to him. "I don't know how to trust something I can't control," I admitted. Rory nodded once. No triumph. No judgment. "Then don't," he said. "Trust me." The simplicity of it was terrifying. And for the first time I realized the fight wasn't between intellect and instinct. It was between fear and choice. The tactical center looked the same as it always had. Cold light. Floating projections. Tables scarred by 100 late-night arguments and impossible decisions. If places could remember, this one would be heavy with ghosts. I stood alone at the central console, building a plan that refused to behave. Lines appeared, then vanished. Routes overlapped in ways I would normally never allow. Gaps remained, intentional this time, untidy, incomplete. My hands hesitated over the controls. Perfection had always been my armor. Clean logic. Redundancies layered until nothing unexpected could slip through. This plan did not have that luxury. Or rather, I wasn't giving it one. Mara entered quietly, stopping a few steps away. She watched the projection stabilize into something that looked unfinished. "This isn't like you," she said. "No," I agreed. "It isn't." I expanded one of the sectors, highlighting an unmarked zone between two strike paths. "No instructions. No contingencies." "Who covers that?" she asked. I didn't answer immediately. Rory's icon appeared at the edge of the display, approaching the room in real time. I could have assigned him a route. Locked him into a sequence. I didn't. "He does," I said instead. Mara's gaze sharpened. "You're leaving it open." "Yes. For him, Yes. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded once. Approval without comment. That was Mara's way. Rory stepped into the room moments later, helmet tucked under one arm. He took in the holograms with a single sweep of his eyes. This is new, he said. I know. He moved closer, eyes narrowing slightly as he traced the gaps. The places where my usual precision gave way to possibility. Where's my route? He asked. There isn't one, I said. Silence stretched. I met his gaze, steady despite the tension coiling in my chest. You know the objective, you know the team, the rest is yours. This was the moment. The one where he could push back. Mock the mess. Demand clarity. Rory didn't. He exhaled slowly, a sound that was almost a laugh. You're serious? Yes. Another pause. Then a nod. All right, he said simply. Something loosened inside me. Not relief, something deeper. He hadn't needed explanation, hadn't asked for justification. He trusted the intent. As the rest of the team filtered in, I finalized the plan, my fingers light over the controls. The projections held, imperfect and alive. Control wasn't gone. I just stopped gripping it like a weapon. As we prepared to deploy, Rory caught my eye across the room. No smirk. No challenge. Just understanding. And for the first time, the uncertainty didn't feel like failure. It felt like choice. The city rose beneath us in broken layers. Roofs slick with rain. Fire escapes rattling in the wind. Neon bleeding into puddles far below. We moved above it all, shadows slipping from ledge to ledge, the night swallowing our footsteps as if it approved. Silas Reed wanted us spread out. I could feel it in the way the signals stuttered, not jammed, not broken, just nudged. Invitations disguised as errors. Data shaped to provoke correction. He's leading us, I said into the calm. Not away. Deeper. Rory's response came without hesitation. Toward the old transit hub. Yes, I said. Because it's messy, vertical. He wants us doubting each other. And, are we? Mara asked. I glanced across the rooftop to where Rory landed in a smooth, controlled roll. He looked up at me, rain darkening his hair, eyes sharp and alert. No, I said. We're not. The abandoned station yawned open beneath the city like a wound that never healed. Rusted tracks. Cracked platforms. Old signage hanging at crooked angles, pointing nowhere. Our footsteps echoed now, impossible to hide. That was intentional. He's close, I murmured, watching the data converge. He'll try to split us. As if summoned by the prediction, the lights flickered. My overlays bloomed with false positives. Hostile signatures blooming and dying in rapid succession. A familiar chill crept up my spine. Rory, I said. Ignore the east platform. Static crackled. You're sure? He asked. Yes. Silas was good. He knew how to mimic my logic. How to construct a problem that begged to be solved the way I would solve it. But this time, I wasn't alone. A voice cut through the channel. Smooth, almost amused. You always were predictable, Eli. My breath hitched. Silas, I said. You're wasting your time. Am the first? He replied. You've tightened your plans, added variables you don't understand. You think instinct will save you? A pause. Then, softer, sharper. You think he will? I felt the hook beneath the words. The invitation to doubt. To seize control. To pull Rory back into rigid structure, where I could manage the outcome. For half a second, the temptation flared. Then Rory spoke. Where do you need me? No challenge. No sarcasm. Just trust. North Tunnel, I said. Don't follow the markers. Follow the movement. Copy. Silas laughed quietly over the channel. You're making a mistake. No, I said. I'm making a choice. The station exploded into motion. Silas triggered his last play. Automated drones, crossfire from elevated positions, noise designed to fracture coordination. My screens lit up, data screaming for attention. I filtered it out. Left, I said. Now. Rory moved before the word finished transmitting. Gunfire roared where he had been a second earlier. He broke through a weak point I hadn't marked, not because I missed it but because it only existed in motion. I adapted around him. Not correcting. Complementing. Silas tried to isolate me next. Cut my feeds. Flood my comms. It didn't matter. Rory reached the upper platform just as Silas emerged from cover, eyes sharp, calculating, already adjusting. "Alpha," Silas said, voice cool. "You don't need him." "You never did." Rory didn't answer. He didn't look at me for confirmation. He moved exactly where I needed him to be, where instinct and intent intersected. I rerouted power, killed the lights. Darkness swallowed the station. One shot rang out. Then silence. When the lights flickered back on, Silas Reed was on his knees, weapon, skidding across the concrete. Calculations finally outpaced by reality. I descended the platform steps slowly, heart pounding, not with fear, but with clarity. Silas looked up at me, something bitter twisting his expression. "You let go?" "Yes," I said. "And that's why you lost?" Rory stood beside me, steady and solid, presence grounding in a way I no longer resisted. As Silas was taken away, the city seemed to exhale. Together, we were more than roles. More than titles. We weren't predator or tactician. We were both. And that made us dangerous. The room was small and deliberately quiet. No screens. No tactical overlays. Just low amber light pooling softly across a narrow table and two chairs that didn't pretend to be anything but uncomfortable. Somewhere beyond the walls, systems hummed and people moved, but here the noise had finally stopped. I sat with my elbows on the table, fingers wrapped around a cup of something hot and vaguely caffeinated. My body was only now catching up with what we'd done. The tremor in my hands wasn't fear. It was aftermath. Rory leaned back in his chair opposite me, stretching his shoulders with a wince. The tension had drained out of him, leaving something looser behind. "Human. For the record," he said. Turning off the lights was rude. I snorted before I could stop myself. "You're welcome." It worked. It nearly got me shot. "You're very hard to shoot," I said dryly. "I've noticed." He huffed a quiet laugh, rubbing a hand over his face. The sound settled something in my chest I hadn't realized was still tight. Silence stretched between us. But it wasn't sharp this time. It felt earned. "You were right back there," Rory said eventually. Not looking at me. "About Reed." I blinked. "About him being insufferable?" "That too," he admitted. "But mostly about letting go." I turned the cup slowly in my hands. "You trusted me." He glanced up, eyes steady. "You gave me room to move." The words met in the space between us and locked together, simple and undeniable. "I couldn't have done it without you," I said. It felt strange, exposed, but also correct. "Your instincts close gaps I didn't even know were there." Rory tilted his head, studying me like he was waiting for the punchline. "And your plan," he replied, "kept me from running straight into a wall I didn't see coming." I smiled, small and real. "So, we're admitting mutual competence now? Don't get used to it." "Tragic." He stood, pacing once around the room, then stopped beside the table. "You know," he said, "for a paper genius, you adapt pretty fast." "And for a blunt instrument," I shot back. "You're surprisingly subtle." He laughed outright at that, the sound warm and unguarded. It echoed faintly off the walls and faded into something comfortable. When the quiet returned, it felt different. Lighter. We weren't arguing. We weren't circling. We were just talking. And for the first time, I realized the noise hadn't just been the city, or the gunfire, or the chaos of the hunt. It had been the distance between us. Now in the low light, it was finally gone. It happened later, when the adrenaline had fully burned off, and the world had settled into something resembling normal. Not in a briefing room. Not during an operation. On a quiet balcony overlooking the city, lights scattered below like constellations someone had forgotten to name. Rory leaned against the railing, elbows resting on cold metal. I stood beside him, close enough to feel his warmth without it being a problem. That felt new. "You ever think about it?" he asked. "About what?" "Pax." I didn't answer right away. The word carried weight. Biology. Expectation. The quiet pressure of instincts people like to pretend were destiny. "Too often," I said finally. "And never the way it's supposed to work." Rory nodded. "Yeah." Silence stretched, companionable this time. "They make it sound automatic," I continued. "Like something that just happens. You're born this way, you end up that way. Roles assigned, lines drawn. And you hate lines," Rory said. "I hate cages," I corrected. He turned toward me then, really looking. "What if it's not a cage?" I raised an eyebrow. "Convince me? What if it's a decision? He said. Not chemistry, not rank, just choosing who you stand with. The city hummed below us, distant and indifferent. You're talking about rules, I said. I am. I considered that. No blind loyalty. Agreed. No dominance masquerading as protection. Rory grimaced. Hard agree. No silencing disagreement for the sake of peace. He smiled slightly. That would be a deal breaker. I exhaled, something loosening in my chest. Then there's trust, real trust. Not obedience. Earned, he said. Both ways. I looked at him, really looked. At the man who broke plans and closed gaps and showed up when things fell apart. At the one person who hadn't tried to define me by what I was, only by what I did. Those rules, I said carefully, don't come standard. No, Rory agreed. They'd be ours. Warmth spread through me, slow and steady. Not the rush people talked about. Not instinct screaming for recognition. Choice. I smiled, just a little. You realize this is the most dangerously reasonable conversation we've ever had. Rory laughed under his breath. Yeah. Terrifying. We didn't seal anything. No declarations. No grand gestures. Just stood there, shoulder to shoulder, watching the city breathe. And for the first time the idea of a pact didn't feel like something waiting to trap me. It felt like something we were building. The city looked different when I stopped trying to reduce it to a grid. Rain slicked the rooftops again, turning concrete into mirrors and shadows into moving parts of a living system. From our vantage point the operation zone pulsed with quiet motion. Vehicles rerouting, lights flicking. On and off, people moving in patterns that only made sense if you accepted that chaos had its own logic. I watched it all without the urge to straighten it. Teams are in position, Mara said over the comm. Awaiting final call. I glanced at the projections hovering in my visor. The plan was there, but it breathed. Routes flexed. Timings adjusted in real time. And there, deliberately unmarked, were the spaces Rory would fill. I didn't feel anxious about them anymore. Proceed, I said. We moved. Rory didn't wait for explicit instructions. He never did. But now, instead of fighting that instinct, I built around it. I tracked his movement not as a deviation but as a variable, one that fed information back into the system instead of breaking it. Pressure shift east, he said calmly. I'm taking the high ground. Already compensated, I replied, watching the data realign. You're clear? He let out a short laugh. You planned for me. I planned with you, I corrected. We flowed through the operation like opposing forces in balance, his decisions sharpening. My models, my structure giving his instincts room to act without burning everything down. When resistance flared, it didn't derail us. It redirected us. This was what I'd been missing. Not control. Integration. At one point, I caught myself smiling as I issued a command that didn't lock anything down, just framed a possibility and let Rory choose how to exploit it. He did, instantly, with ruthless efficiency and zero hesitation. You're thinking 3 steps ahead, he said over the channel. And you're already on the 4th, I replied. The operation concluded cleanly. No unnecessary losses. No frantic corrections. Just momentum that carried us exactly where we needed to go. Later, as dawn began to bleed pale light into the edges of the sky, we stood together overlooking the quiet aftermath. Sirens wailed in the distance, muted and manageable. The world, for once, felt aligned. You didn't tighten up, Rory said. Not once. I considered that. Neither did you. He nodded. Guess we're learning. I thought back to who I'd been at the beginning of this, measuring worth in precision, safety and predictability. I still valued those things. They were part of me. They just weren't all of me. I didn't need to erase instinct to be strong, and Rory didn't need to dismiss intellect to be lethal. We stood there in comfortable silence, 2 forces that had stopped pretending they were opposites. Somewhere behind us, the team was already resetting, preparing for whatever came next. The system would hold. Not because it was perfect, but because it could adapt. I finally understood what Silas never had. Power wasn't choosing between mind and instinct. It was knowing how to let them sharpen each other. Some predators hunt. Others build systems. The dangerous ones do both.